Well, hey, today on the show, we have founder and owner of Uliana Estates. Going to talk to us a little bit today about the life of an entrepreneur, as well as someone who's a first-generation American. Come on, welcome to the show, Julie Czernek. Well, welcome, Julie. How are you?
I am great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show. How's life been lately?
Oh, that's a lot to say in one sentence. 100 miles per hour is how I could describe my life right now.
Yeah, with what kind of makes that up? Like, obviously, you and Tim have 2 kids now.
Yep,
and
we have 2 under 2.
Yeah.
So Crew is now a little over 2, and Chloe is now 5 months.
Wow.
So
Jeez.
we are in the thick of it.
Was that the plan? Like 2 under 2 or?
No, definitely not.
Just happens that way.
It just happened.
Yeah.
But we're okay with it.
That's fun.
They say that it will pay off in the long run.
Yeah. Do you guys want, we're just getting into family like right away, but do you guys want multiple kids, or is 2 probably a good?
I always thought I'd have 3 or 4, but right now I'm happy.
Oh my gosh.
So
Yeah.
we're going to just say 1 of each. We got lucky.
Yeah.
And see.
We have obviously 2 kids, and we definitely I think we want more. It's a lot of work right now.
Madeline's ready.
Madeline's definitely ready. My wife is very ready. She has actually given me some ultimatums. So we will have to have a kid here pretty soon. But yeah, ours we have 3 and 1, and you guys are probably just getting into that too, where it's like the toddler stage and baby stage at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel like is easier for you? Like toddler stage or baby?
Honestly, in my lifestyle, I would say baby, unfortunately. Because with Crew, I just brought him everywhere. He was a part of my business. You could ask, he knew the word flower, he knew rose, he knew all that kind of stuff before he knew his numbers.
Wow.
Because he was always around the flower shop.
Yeah.
You know, Chloe, it's harder because now with 2, it's Crew needs me and he understands.
Yeah.
But doesn't understand that Chloe can't live without me. So that's been the biggest challenge. Mommy, come play. And I'm stuck. Chloe needs me. And so I think that's a little more challenging. So I would say baby, because I feel they're a little easier to go with the flow. Now Crew needs a routine and I need routine.
I can only imagine how hard it is for a toddler too. We thought about that because for the longest time, Leo was we're just his world. You know what I mean? It's just the 3 of us. And for the longest time, Madeline was also staying at home with him. And so obviously lifestyle transition when we moved back to Florida and all that kind of stuff, and then had Elliot, it's now all of a sudden there's an extra person in the mix that's fighting for some attention. And so you can just tell there's moments where it's all right, dude, you're just doing this because we got to feed Elliot right
100%.
now.
100%. And they're smart. And they're smart. And he definitely knows what to pull now. It's so interesting in the last 3 months, they changed so much. Once they hit 2, I feel every month it's their world and their brain just keeps developing. And you're oh my gosh, 3 months ago, you didn't you could barely do that. And now
100%.
it's
yeah. Just wait too. Now that Leo's 3, there's just stuff that he says that I'm how do you know? How did you that they listens? He's listening to everything we say. And especially there's sometimes where I'll kind of not necessarily tune out, but if I'm on the phone with somebody and he's in the car, or with Madeline and we're just talking about stuff, I can look back and I can just see the way he's angling his head. He is trying to learn any kind of information, you know, he's trying to figure it all out.
Or a new word, Crew will hear, we just had family in town for a month. And so they just left yesterday. And he's had someone to play with for almost a month. Yeah. His age or older, or his cousins. And so I feel he grew up so fast in this last month.
That's cool.
Words and things and swimming and all these little things that I'm oh my gosh.
That's so fun. Well, hey, I want to get into talking a little bit about Uliana Estates.
Yes.
What you do is so cool, and just knowing you for a while too, to see the way that it's grown. And I'm sure you'll dive more into it, from maybe something small to just the like, you know, the business and what you do now, maybe walk us through a little bit of like, maybe just kind of give us a general like, hey, this is what Uliana Estates is now. And then we'll kind of go through the history of everything.
Okay. Because I was going to say, I don't even know where to start. I mean, it's been a work in progress for the last 5 years. Definitely at least 5 years now, where it started off so small. And now it just feels like, I can't believe I get to do this every day.
That's
and
cool.
This is like my brand and this is my business and now our property. And it just feels like we've taken baby steps, but now we're like at the top.
Yeah.
And it feels awesome.
And so explain to us like, what is Uliana Estates? If somebody was going to look you guys up, what do you guys do?
So Uliana Estate is a new wedding venue located in Lakeland, Florida. It's on 7 acres and we could do everything from getting ready on site, bridal suite, groom, ceremony, reception hall, AC, or reception hall outside, enough space for all vendors, lots of cars to park. So, I mean, it is a beautiful, beautiful estate. So.
Yeah, it definitely is. Like we got to go there a couple of weeks ago or maybe a month ago for like for a party for some people that we all know. And I was so impressed because it is cool too. It feels so unique in where it is. Like it's necessarily, it's hidden.
Yep.
And just like the beauty of it and everything, you're like, oh, I didn't expect this to be so close to Lakeland.
So close to South Florida.
Yeah. How did you guys, actually, that's a great question. How did you guys stumble upon that?
Honestly, Tim sent me the Zillow and I was actually out and about. I think I was at Home Goods and, you know, we are always looking. We've always been looking. And so I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like the Zillow photos look awesome. And I was like, wait, let me type it in. I have no kids with me. Actually, I was pregnant at the time. So I didn't have crew with me. And so I was like, okay, let me type it in. And it was literally on the way home. So I was like, all right, I'll just
swing by. Yeah.
And I drove by and I took a video and I was like, this is definitely worth a walkthrough. So the next text was to Paige Wagner. And I was like, I want to see this like tomorrow. And she was like, okay. She was like, this is actually really nice. And so she was like, all right, you know, and we kind of went from there. And then we did a walkthrough a couple days later. And honestly put an offer in, I think, within 48 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And to like paint a picture, because obviously this is like an audio podcast too, like it's a pretty big piece of land.
Yeah.
And like I imagine like obviously weddings are going to happen there and things like that. But like we were there for a birthday party, like just all the stuff that you guys have can kind of be a wide array of stuff, right?
Yes. And that's, I mean, I think like the goal is to do weddings because I've been doing intimate parties for a couple years now from our other location. And so it's kind of exciting to like grow into the next thing, but even beyond weddings, because we've been in the wedding industry now, you know, with the florals, it's like we've been in it for years.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to like, once things are settled in and we are fully running now, but like, you know, once the name even gets bigger and bigger, I would love to do like community events. Like that's what I'm excited for. Like bringing something new to Lakeland besides weddings. Cause you've known me for a long time.
Yeah.
I don't like doing the same thing over and over and over again.
Sure.
And sometimes when I think about doing a wedding for the rest of my life, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is like my new career path. But I'm like, no, I have like things up my sleeve that I would love to do. So
do you have like an idea? Because I think that's awesome. And what is so cool, like maybe you're listening to this and you live in Lakeland, so you get it. But maybe you're listening to this and you're not, like you've maybe never visited our city. I think what's so cool about Lakeland is the community.
Yes.
Like obviously we go to the same church and we have community there, but I think even outside of that, Lakeland is just so well built for community. Like what are some things you vision?
Well, like I don't think we would be where we are today without the community. Like we started off in our home and now we're big. And so it's like, you know, Lakeland has definitely been the biggest supporters. I think for some of the visions that I think outside of weddings would be like a tree farm, like during Christmas, but it's like, it's more than just coming and getting trees, but it's like the Santa photos are there and crafts for kids and hot chocolate bars, but then also having like vendors there, just opening another space where like, we don't have to drive to bigger cities to get, you know, like a pumpkin patch, like all the big holidays, like another space for being a mom now and having kids. It's like you need activities. So always looking through that lens as well of like, what can I create for Lakeland, for families, and getting more people involved in the community and, showcase other vendors.
That'd be awesome.
Small businesses.
Makes me feel like I'm back in Pennsylvania a little bit with that stuff. That's so cool. Do you feel like a venue was always the plan, or did it just kind of evolve into that?
I think once we started the business, because being florist, all you do is go to venues.
Yeah.
And so once we started seeing like, wow, people get married literally everywhere. I think that was kind of like, it started becoming a dream always in the back of my mind. Like, okay, as I get older, as I change my career and things like that, like what happens, this was before we had kids. So it's like, okay, what happens when I am a mom? What happens when I have kids? What happens when my kids go to school? Like, how does being a florist work? And so I think a wedding venue just kind of always was like appealing to me because I was like, and I've been to so many venues. I was like, the ones that obviously always attracted me were like the family ones. Like, oh my gosh, to live on property when you're doing like a showing and your kids are at home with the dad, and I could run out and do a client showing and then run back home, or like take a golf cart over. Like I've been to venues like that, being a day of coordinator or being a bride myself once. Like I've seen a lot. And so I've always kind of had that in the back of my mind. And so now being here, having 7 acres, and we found a property with a home on it, like it literally hit everything.
That's
like
awesome.
We've looked outside of Lakeland, and it was always a bummer knowing that we could leave Lakeland. So when we came across this, and it hit everything on the list, like Central Lakeland, 7 acres of land, a home on property, like there's so much room to grow and dream. Sure. It was definitely like a no-brainer.
That's awesome. And even like hearing you say that out loud, that almost like it just feels like it makes so much sense for what you were doing in like the floral industry of like, hey, that's how you scale this to continue to grow, is like you're going to all these venues. Just start, this is my venue, which I'm guessing you guys still go to other venues, right?
Yes, we currently are, and we still will for a little bit, but the dream would be just to be in-house eventually, where, the traveling is so much on us. Like, even we've done some recently, and it's like, okay, packing up all of our inventory, like back into the car, and then having to bring it back on property. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's so nice when we just do events on site and you just walk the candles over and not have to like load them in and load them out and et cetera. So,
and you guys have an amazing space. So you might as well just do it there.
Just do it there.
So take us back to the beginning. Like obviously the beginning is Uliana Floral.
Yes.
And so like how did that start for you? Was that just like for a while, was it a side hustle? Was it something that you anticipated to become like, this is going to be my main thing? Maybe walk us through a little bit of the history there.
Yeah, I mean, well, me and you both had the same boss. So,
we did.
No, it was not a side hustle.
Yeah.
No, honestly. So what happened was my parents decided to move to Florida.
Yeah.
So after we were married for about a year, Tim and I, my amazing parents from Seattle, Washington, wanted to move to Florida. And so they ended up in Lakeland. And honestly, I was like, I didn't want my mom to have to like go get another job. She's been in the same company, had the same job her entire life in America. Yeah. And so I think that's been...
What did she do?
I'm 33, so probably 34, 35 years.
Yeah.
She was like a receptionist at a food, like a massive Chinese food warehouse.
Awesome.
So if you've ever been to Seattle, Washington, we have great Asian food. And so that's all she's ever done. It was the one and only job she's ever had. And so it was weird for me to being like, is my mom going to work at Publix? Like, where does she go? Like, what does she do now? Like, she's too young to retire, things like that. And so she's always done florals for like our church back home. And so she always did florals like for funerals and weddings, and she did my wet florals and things like that. And so I was like, honestly, Lakeland doesn't have anything. Like, it's true. A lot of my friends got married working at the church. Like, we've needed decor and things like that. And so honestly, it was just an idea. So I sat with my boss and I was like, hey, like, would you be okay with this? Like, this is really my mom's thing, but obviously I'm going to help her. Like, I have the influence, things like that. And, Pastor Andrew was like, absolutely, like, go for it.
That's awesome.
And so it really started with just being my mom's thing. Yeah. And we honestly did not at all have anything figured out. I just started at Instagram and I was like, hey, we're going to start florals. And my vision was, if you know where we used to live, it was like on a main street. So I was going to be like, every Saturday, come by and get your florals, and like super low key, just enough to like go week by week. And then honestly, once we announced it, just kind of happened, and we just took it little by little. And then 2 years later, we kind of outgrew our extra bedroom space. And so then we got our storefront. So then 2 years later, we got our storefront location, which again was never really a dream. It was just kind of happened. And we kind of did that. And then that's where I was kind of torn in too many places where I was working full time. This was growing at a rapid pace, and I was working on the weekends. So I literally had no day off, because working at the church, I had Fridays off, which was great to prep for Saturdays to do weddings. And then I was back at work on Sunday. And so after a couple years, I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, something has to give.
For sure.
And we were at such a great place in the business where I was like, okay, if I stop now, I'll never be able to do this again. So I'll either risk it and see if it works. And so then once we got the storefront, I decided to step down from the church and full-time job, and just, I needed to focus on the business. And a couple years later, we got the wedding venue. So little by little, we grew every year.
Yeah, that is so cool. I actually had no idea that it was more of like not a project, I guess, but something like for your mom originally. As like as I can get that too. Like, you know, especially like your mom making such a big transition from Washington, which I'm sure she had like a lot of equity in where she worked, to coming down here. I imagine to be close to grandkids and things like that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
It's
and that's like where the name came from.
Yeah.
So like Uli Floral started because, one, I did not think it was going to get to this place. But my real name, my legal name, is Uliana.
Right.
So I think actually Paige gave me the idea, like, do Uli. It's unique. It's your legal name. So it's about you, but it's really your mom is the talent. Like, my mom is the florist. My mom is the talent. I run everything behind scenes, and I say I'm her assistant. And so it was like, instead of originally being like a flower name or Daisy or anything else, I was just like, Yuli's kind of unique. We added floral just to like, because Yuli wasn't a flower or anything like that. And so we just added the word floral.
Helps make sense.
Yeah. Just so it's like a mother-daughter duo. And so since my mom named me, but I go by Julie, it was kind of like a unique hidden gem of like, oh, there's a sweet story behind it.
Yeah.
And then as we expanded, we went to Yuli & Co., because then we started doing balloon arches and decorations and event planning. And then it was just like, well, floral doesn't make sense. So then that's where we added just Yuli & Co.
It's awesome.
So.
Yeah. It's cool to see also just how much, like, I don't know if I was your first, but I was definitely one of the first, like, very first, like, customers.
Yes.
I'm just trying to continue like getting my wife flowers, like,
Absolutely.
so I don't have to do it when, like, you know what I mean? Like when I'm in trouble or something.
Yes.
Just like
or the big
some
holidays,
sort of, or just the big holidays. Just trying to be
always
consistent.
Really good about that. And I feel like Madeline always appreciated that, because you were like, hey, you have some extra flowers, I'll take them. Or, and I think that's what I always wanted to do as well. Just like, I love doing that for my friends, where it's like, hey, there's a handful of guys that are probably hopefully listening that, I always try to hint their way, or if I have extra florals or anything like that, where I'm just like, hey, surprise your wife just because. And
for sure.
I feel like the wives
it works, guys.
Always appreciate it.
It definitely works. Well, so it's pretty clear, I think, just from even you telling like the story, like what you guys do is so like family oriented. Like
Absolutely.
From my understanding too, like your mom has been like the number one employee. Like she's been from day
one. One and only.
Yeah. And even though, but like what you guys are doing right now, like if you want to talk about that too, there's like, I know you guys are restoring like the property too for where you guys have, and that's like your family's helping out with that, right?
Yeah. So when we got the property in January, there was a lot of work to be done. And I was 8 months pregnant or 9 months pregnant, and so I couldn't do much. I mean, my mom, my dad, Tim's parents, my in-laws really have flipped this property by themselves.
Wow.
This last leg of renovations where we've been kind of capped out to a certain degree, we've hired out and gotten help.
Sure.
And as we've learned and made mistakes and, have had to, but really it's been both of our parents. Like I would say them four is the reasons that we were able to run at the pace we're doing it at. do certain things is because my family has really been doing a lot of it. Because again, I was pregnant, couldn't do much. And then I had my baby and couldn't do much. And so I feel like now that Chloe's 5 months, I'm like, now I'm on property.
Sure.
But I would say 90% of it's done already. So sometimes I have to call my mom and be like, so Mom, where are these items? Because she knows the property more than I do.
Yeah.
Because she organized everything, put everything away, things like that. So
yeah. Well, I think what's unique to maybe like just talk a little bit about this, about your guys' families and even specifically you, you are like a first generation American, right? Like your mom and dad originally moved from
Ukraine.
Yep. When did they move? Like, do you know what year?
Oh, don't quiz me now.
Well, it was like right before you were born?
I was born in 91, so probably 90.
Okay.
Because my brother's 89, and he was born right before they left.
Yeah.
And we actually, what's crazy is we actually just had this conversation with my in-laws.
Yeah.
My mom, my sister, and my family was in town, but specifically my sister from Canada was here, and she was asking my mom some questions about like, wanted a refresher of like our family history and stuff like that. And so really my parents applied for a visa to come to America, and they had the application and they were accepted, and their family didn't know for 6 months. They sat on their visas for 6 months before they told anyone, because they knew no one. It was coming. It was literally coming to a country that they knew nothing about, didn't know the language, didn't have a plan. And then my aunt had a friend that came to America that called her and was like, this is everything that they said it was, and
that's awesome.
Everything. And so my aunt was like, hey, we think we're going to apply for America. And my mom was like, well, actually, surprise. we already did. Yeah. And we're accepted, and it was this whole thing. And so little by little, my entire family came. We were one of the first family from our cousins, but ideally everyone followed, minus, I think, one set of cousins stayed. But other than that, my grandparents came, my grandfather stayed, passed away in Ukraine, but everyone else came here.
Sheesh. That is something that is so like just tough to imagine too. The step that it takes to move somewhere. Like, I mean, like, and maybe a lot of us can picture like on a very small scale of like I moved states to go to a different college, but everybody's in the same like life, season as I am. Everybody speaks the same language. For them, it was, man, we're really taking a huge, I mean, I'm sure it felt like a huge chance, right?
Oh, yeah. Like my mom was like, they took nothing. Like they just had their suitcases. My mom, oh man, my mom's going to listen to this. So I want to say, I forget how old she was. I think she tells me, because I'm 33. I think she tells me like at 32, she had 3 kids and she took everything.
Wow.
The little that she had, and moved her entire life here, and had no plan, had no idea where they were going. Honestly, because this is an audio, she would probably even be willing to share the story. It's pretty
it'd be
unique.
Fun.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it's really crazy to think where I am now, and being a mom of 2, I couldn't imagine moving states is one thing.
Yeah.
Imagine moving to a country where you don't know the language, you can't read, you can't write, and they took the risk, and I'm so grateful for them that they did, because I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be American.
That's awesome.
I was born on the American soil to be the president. I'm just saying.
Well, even the language thing, obviously I'm sure there's the step and financial step that it took to get here, but there's probably a lot of like cultural differences too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so you were the first and only child born in America.
Yes.
Like your brothers and sisters were all born in. Or do you have a brother and sisters?
Yes. 3? So I'm the youngest of 4.
Yeah. Okay.
So my oldest sister, and then I have 2 brothers, and then me.
Gotcha.
So yep, they were all born there, and I was born here.
What are some of the like growing up in a household that is like just recently moved from a different country, moved from the Ukraine, and then growing up in America? What are some of the like clashes of culture that you experienced?
Well, a lot of you would just say I'm sheltered.
Really?
Yes, and I didn't know it. I didn't know any different. But now, being a mom and being in my 30s, I'm like, oh yeah, I never had that, or I never dealt with that, or I have no idea what you guys are talking about. A lot of songs that I don't know, like I'm learning it almost with my son to a degree. Like, yes, I might have heard them growing up, but nothing to the degree as a mom now having to sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star.
Oh, gotcha.
Like, all of those. Like, yes, I was born here, but again, when I went to school, I knew I was learning English, but I would come home and I would speak Ukrainian.
Right. Yeah.
And so like, there was this like, you're torn in two places. You're learning two languages. You're confused a lot of times. Like, I remember being young and I was like, I just want to be American. Like, and when I would yell back at my parents, I'd be like, you guys moved to America. Like, I want to be American. Like, I want to, hence why I changed my name. And like, I did not want to be more different than I already felt. I had to go to ESL. Because of my name, like, even though I was born here and, I don't have an accent, things like that. But because of like my siblings, I had to follow in their trades. So there was like some complications of that. But all I wanted to do was American. And I was like, my whole life, I said, I will marry an American boy. Like, I want the easiest last name. I don't want Moranchuk anymore. I want like Smith, like Wilson, like the easiest name.
You kind of went the opposite way.
And then here I meet Tim, and
Tim's incredible.
And Czech Republican. And it's just like, oh, I went from Moranchuk to Czernek with a Z in my last name. Like,
I want to get to that too, because I'm sure there's been some unique, like, now that you guys are, for years now, been married, and like two different kind of cultures there coming together. But like, I'm sure for you growing up in Washington and having that like pull, right? Like, there's like a culture at home and a culture at school. Like, I'm sure that made like, that's probably made school difficult, right? Like,
I am not studious whatsoever. I have never liked it. I think it was just probably something out of it. Like, when I came home, like, I love my parents, but when I came home, like, they couldn't help me.
Yeah.
Like, yes, we had a boys and girls club, and, I could get extra help through them, but it wasn't something that was like, my parents weren't helping me with science projects and spelling bees and things like that. It was just like, I just did what I had to do to survive.
Yeah.
So I never was like a reader or an honors. Like, I just kind of went to school and then came home and played. And like, because my parents were working, they didn't have much when they came, so they've worked their whole lives. Of course, I have amazing siblings and older brothers and sisters that definitely took me under their wing. But I definitely was not, like, we actually went for a season of my life. I actually went to school on Saturday, actually to learn Ukrainian. So like, our church, we went to a Ukrainian church, and like, our church had basically Saturday school for a lot of the kids that were born here to still learn their language and learn how to read and write and all of that. And I hated it. I
was about to say, I can imagine from what you're saying that you probably hated that.
Oh, it was the worst. But you know what? Now being in my 30s, I'm like, gosh, I wish I would have taken more out of that. I wish I knew more. And obviously what's going on in the world, I'm the only family member that never made it to Ukraine. All my siblings went back, and I refused my whole life. I said, I don't want to go. I wasn't born there. I don't care for it. And oh, how I regret that now. Yeah. My parents went, I forget how many years ago, probably 5 years ago, with my older brother, which I totally could have gone, and I didn't. When me and Tim went to Czech Republic, I was like, next time I go to Czech, I'm going to go to Ukraine because it's so close. Yeah. And so it's a bummer. Like, obviously now that sucks because
with everything that's going on.
Oh yeah. There. And everything, my mom was like, it'll never look the same. It'll never be the same. And, when she would watch the news, it's like, she was like, I used to walk on those streets, so that sucks.
Yeah.
So,
man, I know we didn't necessarily even plan on talking about this, but like, I'm sure like your family knows people that are there right now. And that just even popped into my head of like, man, it's like they're looking at some images and videos of like their childhood of what was.
Oh yeah.
Like, how does that affect, I mean, I'm sure it affects your maybe your parents on an even deeper level, but just you guys as like a family too, like seeing that.
Yeah, I think being kids, like for my parents, it hits home.
Yeah.
They have family, they have friends, their childhood home there, like all of it. It definitely hits them different. For a while, we talked about it, and then it got to a point where it's like you just don't talk about it because it hurts so bad.
Yeah.
And then us as kids, we would ask questions because we wanted to know more, but you could see it on their faces that it wasn't easy. But we do have family there that would obviously keep in touch with us when everything happened. But now it's almost like back to normal.
Yeah.
One of the families did come visit us for a season. I think she came here for like a month. And I remember having tea with her in the backyard, and she was like, man, like, I can't believe I have to go back in a couple of days. And like, while I was in America, I kind of forgot about what was going on, but now I have to like face it and like start over and like go back and like have to live in war and like have a curfew and all these things that, you know, you hear it from firsthand of what they faced.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a bummer, and it's definitely not easy. So it sucks.
Yeah, man. Like I actually it's interesting. I was thinking about this a few weeks ago, and maybe it was this, I'm trying to remember, but just the thought of we as Americans, and hopefully this will stay this way, but like we've never really had to experience like life in like a war-torn country, you know, or even just like active war going around near where we live. Like that is something to think about. Like that's, I mean, obviously praying that never happens, but just to think about like moving into that and like maybe having to live like, you know, on like just out of like, oh man, what could happen next?
Where my family is, they're on I'm not going to say it because if someone listens, they're going to correct me, but like they live on the opposite side of where the war is happening. Yeah. So in a way they're safe, but they're not all at the same time. Like recently they, you know, attacked like a children's hospital, and, you know, so it's like every day you just don't know, but they are on the other side. So they were still, you know, getting hit with things at first, and then it got quieter, but, you know, they go to work every day, and I have a cousin that is a police officer, and that's what she has to risk her life every day, not knowing. And, you know, my aunt actually works at like an adoption center. So she's with kids that already don't have parents. So it's very heavy. It's very, very heavy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely not easy hearing it and seeing it through their eyes too. It's like hard when you're like here and you kind of forget. It's kind of like being a Floridian when like a hurricane comes. Sure. Our worlds feel like they're falling apart, and you're like in panic mode, and you're like doing what you got to do to protect your house if you're a homeowner, and you're like, if you're a parent, you have to buy food and like all these things. And then like I'm talking to family that lives in Seattle, Washington, and they're like out on a boat on a beautiful sunny day.
Right. Like you
know, like you think that everyone's worried about the world, but then you're like, oh yeah, like it's just Florida that's getting, or the East
for sure.
Coast
It's just like
hit.
the vastness of our world. Like just how much is actually going on, and we're all in the same place, you know? Yeah. What's crazy is, this is crazy to even think about. Like when this whole thing first started, it's been like over a year or two now. Jeez, like the war in Ukraine has been for almost 2 years. When this first started, I was a history teacher in Pennsylvania. And so that's when we lived up there, I was a history teacher. And I remember teaching our kids this, and this is by no means like a political podcast, or I'm not even like the greatest like historian or whatever, but I was showing this to our kids, keeping them up to date. And I remember even saying something of like, yeah, this probably won't last long. This will be like something quick and over, but it's cool. It's like interesting to know what's going on in the world right now. Not cool is the wrong word, but like just interesting to know. Yeah. And like here today, like 2 years later, it's still going on. Oh man, like it's wild.
It's wild.
Well, maybe kind of bringing it back to your family. Now that you have kids too, and it's interesting because I'm sure like when you were a kid, you like loved it, but I'm sure there's part of you now where it's like, oh, I want my kids to know, like whether it's Ukrainian, I want them to know some Czech. Like how do you guys do that, you and Tim?
Oh yeah. Well, see, what's funny is like Tim and I were very similar growing up. Like he had to go to ESL because he actually came to America when he was 5.
Wow. Yeah.
So, you know, it was a little different for him. But so now when Crew was little, like, you know, 9 months or a year, when you kind of start talking and they start babbling, I was trying to do everything in Ukrainian because one, I'm kind of learning again, and I have the benefit of being with my parents. And so I would talk to him in like Ukrainian and stuff. And Tim would always be like, talk to him in English. Like he needs to know English. Like he needs to be a cool kid. And I was like, Tim, I promise you, as soon as he starts talking and watching Miss Rachel, he will be fine. Like,
He'll pick it up quick.
He'll pick it up quick. And so, and definitely he knows really a lot of English, but I still till this day, I tell my parents and I tell Tim's parents, like, speak to him in your guys' language. Because I think it'd be very special. Like, my dad doesn't speak English. So for my dad to have a relationship with my son, my son needs to know the basics. And so right now it's actually really cute because he's only 2. We are doing really well about like teaching him all 3 languages. And so when Tim's mom is watching Crew and Chloe, but really with Crew right now, she brings Czech books. She reads to him in Czech. He watches Czech shows. And then my parents really just speak to him in Ukrainian, and like same thing, like when we could find a Ukrainian show and things like that. And Crew really could kind of understand all 3 of us.
What a smart kid.
You know, we're trying. But it's just cool because like you said early in the podcast, like he'll just pick up words and it'll be in Ukrainian. And I'll look at him and be like, whoa, that was so cool.
But he probably used it correctly, right?
He used it correctly.
Yeah. Wow.
Or like I'm even learning from him because like, again, my father doesn't speak English. Yeah. So like, and he helps with my son all the time. So like when they're playing the monster trucks and things like that, my dad is talking to him in Ukrainian. And so he'll like pick up words. Like he could say beach and sand and swimming in all 3 languages. That's depending on who he's talking to. Yeah. So it's really cool. So
and you guys spend a lot of time at the beach in the sand, so he needs to know.
So like I personally love it. Like I definitely want him to know the basics and like know how to count in all the languages and things like that because you know, after us it could die. You know, like if I don't carry it on, then who will? Like if my brother doesn't carry it on to our kids, like
totally.
You know, it's like, so it's weird to think that of like, if it's going to end with our generation to a degree. Yeah. So,
man, that is a regret that it's cool to see that you guys are doing that because your kids will thank you, I'm sure. Like a regret that I have is like, I have like a adoptive grandma. She's passed now. She had like a pretty long battle with cancer and just like, you know, passed from that. But she was from France. And she helped like raise me and my sister. And she would always try to teach us like stuff. And I remember there was some stuff like there's probably like a couple songs that I could sing in French. And I think I could get somebody to like start speaking English to me, you know, if we were having a conversation. But she would always try to get us to speak it. And we would be like, Mimi, stop. Like, we don't want to do this. Like, we just don't want to learn it.
Oh, you're so stubborn.
And I remember in college then like regretting that and trying to take a French class. And it was like just so much harder, you know, like I could have had such a great head start, but just like, you know, chose not to. But it is such a cool thing, especially like it goes beyond just like, oh, this is a skill I have. It's like now it's like it's a connection to family.
100%. And that's what I always have to remind my dad, like, because my dad will try to like speak English to him because I get it. Crew knows everything in English, of course. But I always look at him and I'm like, if you want to have a relationship with him, you need to teach him Ukrainian. Like you could always learn English or I could always translate for you. But like if you want him to remember words and know words, because my mother-in-law, Marcella, she does so good with him. She will sit with him and she will only speak to him in Czech. Or she will say this word in Czech and then she'll translate it in English so he'll understand it. But then from moving forward, she'll only say it in Czech. Or if he says anything like food or water or a fruit, she'll only say it to him in Czech and he repeats it because obviously he's 2 years old. He's in the phase of repeating everything. But I appreciate it so much because I don't know Czech. And Tim's working. So Tim, you know, he's not around as much as I am to be around, you know. So it's like, I'm very thankful that I have her that is like really teaching him because I want that.
That's so cool. Well, hey, we have 1 more minute left. And with 1 more minute left, I want to give you some time to maybe talk a little bit about, maybe just the floor is yours. If there's something that you want to like, you know, what's coming up with Uliana Estates or maybe just like something encouraging. What would be that last thing?
Oh, if I had 1 last minute. I mean, honestly, I think like just being able to talk about like where I started to where I am now in everything, like from life, like being a childhood, being a first generation to see like what my parents have gone through. I could probably get emotional because my parents have sacrificed so much for me because I was the youngest, so I was always the baby. But then also they moved to Florida. So like I have a sibling in Seattle, Texas, Canada. They picked Florida. So I'm very lucky to have them so close to me.
Yeah.
Be with my grandkids, or be with their grandkids, be with my kids. But more than anything, they are giving everything to the property and to my business.
That's awesome.
Because they always say, we might have not had much when we, like you were growing up, and we don't have a business to give you, and we don't have money to give you, but like, we know how to work. And so they're like,
That's
if
cool.
this is what we can do to help you, like, we want to help you on both sides. Tim's parents say the same thing. And his dad has helped us build things from ground on up. And it'll be cool to know, as long as we have this property, how our like parents' hands have been on it.
For sure.
But also to know, like, where we started in the business and talking about Uli Floral feels so long ago to where we are now is just like, I couldn't have dreamed it. Like, I couldn't have dreamed this life of like starting off so small. Maybe it was a side hustle. Maybe it wasn't. Didn't really have plans for a storefront. Didn't really have, like, I didn't have it figured out.
Yeah.
And I feel like that in life. Like, you know, I didn't go to college, and I went to Bible college, and I did internships, and I worked. I made my way up in work. But like, I don't know, it's just kind of cool to say, like, it started off small and it got here, just taking step by step, year by year. Like, I didn't feel like I had to have everything figured out to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm still in it right now. Like, yes, I might have a wedding venue, and I might have a property, and I might have a business name, but in a way I'm almost starting over.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's a new clientele.
It's something
it's
new.
It's a new business. Yeah. It's a new market. It's on a bigger scale. You're getting from people coming from all over the state, from different states. Like, it's so much weight that carries on. But all to encourage of saying, like, I know this might sound cliche, but like, keep dreaming. Like, even if it feels small or impossible, like, I thought we would have a wedding venue 10 years from now. Like, I would have been happy if my kids were in school, and then it's a way to, like, in a way, kind of retire, but stay active, but be creative and things like that. Like, I never thought I would do it now. Like, I was happy where we were on 1216 South Florida. Like, I was happy with having one kid, being pregnant with another. Like, life was great and life was content. And I just feel like, because I kept dreaming, and because we kept looking and like never gave up, and every time we looked at a property, like, Paige laughed, because like when we finally got this property, she was like, I'm so glad I'm done traveling with you, because we took her everywhere. We drove so far. And so I think, like, just to encourage anyone that's starting a small business or has an idea, like, just start it and just see what happens. And you never know the relationships that will get you there.
For sure.
We have some of the biggest cheerleaders. You even said it yourself, like, you've supported us since day one. And we've had so many customers that they were supporting us in the beginning. They might have, but we've also grown and changed. Like, we're not the everyday flower shop anymore. So I understand, but it's just been really cool to see, like, the community, like, get involved in your community, love people, love your church, or love other places that is family to you outside of your family, and just start it and just go day by day, step by step, and take that risk. I'm so glad we took the risk, and I hope it pays off. Like, we're in it right now. Yeah. We're in the thick of it. Well, but I hope it pays off.
I can't wait. And I'm sure everybody that knows you as well and that's journeyed along, like, can't wait for the next, to see the next couple of years and how this continues to grow and continues to evolve. I think you have an incredible, obviously, like, extended family, as you mentioned, like with your parents and Tim's parents. I think that, like, you and Tim are an incredible family, incredible friends to us. There's no doubt in my mind, and I can speak for Madeline as well, is just, I can see that what you guys are going to do, you do things with excellence, and you do things just at, like, with a big dream and go for it. There's no doubt that what you guys are going to do is going to be incredible. And so I'm excited to journey along. I'm sure as everybody else is. Where can people find you real quick too? Like, find out more.
At Uliana Estate or ulianaestate.com, keeping it simple.
Awesome. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
Well, hey, as we're getting close to the holiday season, it's time to start thinking about family photos. And if you're wanting to get family photos done in the Central Florida area, look no further than Drip and Grace. Drip and Grace is an empowerment brand that cultivates environments where you feel seen, known, and loved. Through the photography platform they have, they remind you that your story matters, and they capture it beautifully. Be on the lookout for some incredible deals that are coming out for the fall and winter portrait sessions. And if you're interested, you can book your sessions by heading over to their website at dripingrace.com or reach out to them at their Instagram handle, dripingracephoto, and you'll be glad that you did.